answering this question in the 1990s, and I said that the West really doesn't understand militant Islam. So I wrote a book in 1995, and I said that if the West doesn't wake up to the suicidal nature of militant Islam, the next thing you'll see is the militant Islam is bringing down the World Trade Center. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door in Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone. There's a new age, something new is happening.
And that is speculation on your part, or you have some evidence to that effect?
You know, I was asked the same question in 1986. I had written a book in which I had said that the way to deal with terrorist regimes, well, with terror, was to deal with the terrorist regimes. And the way to deal with the terrorist regimes, among other things, was to apply military force against them.
The way we did in Afghanistan.
The way, for example, I want to answer your question.
Well, I guess I'm running out of time, so I quickly was trying to get there. We've done, I think, what you proposed in Afghanistan, yet I haven't seen that sort of neighborhood effect.
Well, I think there's been an enormous effect. The effect was, we were told that there would be a contrary effect. First of all, people said that there would be tens of thousands of people streaming into Afghanistan, zealots who would be outraged by America's action, and this would produce a counter-reaction in the Arab world.
But I think you're not saying that when you take an action like we did in Afghanistan, we're going to see all the other countries just fold.
No, what we saw is something else. First of all, we saw everybody streaming out of Afghanistan. The second thing we saw is all the Arab countries and many Muslim countries trying to side with America, trying to be okay with America. The application of power is the most important thing in winning the war on terrorism. If I had to say, what are the three principles of winning the war on terror? It's like, what are the three principles of real estate, the three L's, location, location, location? The three principles of winning the war on terror are the three W's, winning, winning, and winning. The more victories you amass, the easier the next victory becomes. The first victory in Afghanistan makes the second victory in Iraq that much easier. The second victory in Iraq will make the third victory that much easier too, but it may change the nature of achieving that victory. It may be possible to have implosions taking place. I don't guarantee it, Mr. Turney, but I think it makes it more likely.
Floor by floor instead of popping out.
It was if they had detonated. They were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running. Floor by floor instead of popping out.
It was if they had detonated. They were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down.
All of a sudden it was like bang, 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 like bullet shots.
I saw from the corner, boom, 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 boom. Just like 20 straight hits. Just went down. And as the bombs were going, people just started running, and I sat there and watched a few of them explode, and then I just turned around and I just started running for my life, because at that point the World Trade Center was coming right down from the corner. Boom, 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 boom. The whole building just went. And as the bombs were going, people just started running, and I sat there and watched a few of them explode.
The only way that a building can accelerate as it collapses is by having pre-engineered, precisely timed, and precisely placed explosives. In other words, controlled demolition.
He was in the explosion. He was in the lobby, and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
What was it like? What was it like?
Horrible. Horrible. The whole building just collapsed on us. inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the...
Yeah, definitely secondary explosion. But we was inside waiting to go upstairs, and on the way upstairs, the whole fucking thing blew. And we just collapsed on everybody inside the lobby.
So much of the first tower coming down, secondary?
I don't know about the first one, but I know the second one was terrible. Then there was a third one too after that one. Yes. Everybody was inside the building, waiting to go upstairs, and they just let loose. Everything just let loose inside the building.
So what you told me is that there was plane and whatever hit the building, then the secondary explosion.
There was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. The whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside.
Just AM after that?
Just man, everybody tried to work their way out.
Trying to help all the brothers get out.
A lot of people trapped inside.
I was sitting in the Brooklyn Navy Yard.
We watched the first explosion. As we watched the building, so a black, very large airplane fly right into the second building. It came out of the south, right in front of our eyes. Just, it was so surreal, like a movie set.
Second and third explosions also, right?
We were in the building for the third one, and it collapsed. It was on this drive here for the other one.
People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings could blow up. This ain't done yet.
This is on top of this. That could be no worse than this. Could be nothing no more than worse. You're in the building trying to help people, and it's exploding on the inside the building.
The bomb in the building started clearing out. Sorry, you said it's a bomb? What'd you say? The bomb in the building started clearing out. Got it.
There was worldwide live television coverage, and the coverage continued throughout the day. The interesting thing is that at 10 p.m. London time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, they reported that the Salomon Brothers building, Building 7, had collapsed. The only problem is Building 7 didn't collapse until 5:20 p.m. New York time.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center...
Building 7 is clearly visible right behind the reporter. It wasn't until 5:20 Eastern Time that it came down.
Where were you on September 11th?
I was home. And the only reason I wasn't where I was every morning, subsequent to the 26th day of July, my mornings were spent usually at a breakfast meeting at Windows, an 8 o'clock breakfast meeting, Windows, the top of it, and then going down to visit with my tenants, my new tenants, at the Trade Center, getting to know them, understanding their problems and so forth, ascertaining how we could service their needs better, which is one of the first things you do when you acquire a property. You begin to meet your tenants and start talking with them. And so my mornings were spent at the Trade Center, and then by noon I was back uptown. And so that particular morning, because I have light-colored hair and fair skin, and I'm an annuity to the dermatologist, my wife, God bless her, had made an appointment for me at the doctor. remember dressing to go to the doctor. I'm finally saying to my wife, I said, sweetheart, I've got so much to do downtown. I got to cancel this. I've got to go downtown. And she said, you're not going to cancel this appointment. You're going to the dermatologist. And, having been married now to the same woman for 46 years, you get this sense of determination on occasion, their voices. And I said, okay, yes, dear, I'll go. I'll go. And then just minutes later, received a telephone call to turn on a television set and witnessed this horrendous circumstance. The first plane hitting, and then the second plane hitting. Of course, with the second hit, it became obvious that this was terrorism. I had the pleasure of working pretty much with every prime minister of Israel, from Yitzhak Shamir forward. I said to myself, wouldn't it be fantastic if I could own the Twin Towers? We got very, very lucky. The governor of New York, George Pataki, decided one day that maybe it would be good to privatize the ownership of the World Trade Center. So I got a call from the governor's office, and they said, would you ever consider owning the World Trade Center? It was very, very good for the family, very good for us, and we were very, very fortunate.
Mr. Prime Minister, welcome. Why was the United States hit so savagely? What was the objective of these terrorists?
What we're dealing with are terrorist attacks launched by Islamic militants who enjoy the support of radical states in the Middle East. This militant Islam, I think, perverts and distorts one of the world's great religions. They want to reverse history. They really don't accept the last 1,000 years of history in which Islam receded and the West and democracy became the primary force in the world. And so they want to roll back time. And in order to do that, they have to strike at the main bastion of the Western democracy, and that's the United States. And so they hit you now, and they'll hit you again, because their objective is literally to destroy the United States. If they can't destroy it, they can hit it and strike it, and at least crush its will, and bring it to its knees. This may sound fantastic, but that's exactly what they think. And this is inspired again and again by Islamic militant teachings, and of course by the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is what the Ayatollah Khomeini was all about. So they see the United States as the great Satan. We in Israel, by the way, are the little Satan. If Belgium was in our place right here in the Middle East, it would also be a little Satan. And they go after the United States, and they'll go after it again.
Awaken the sleeping giant, don't you agree?
Yes, but I think this is a wake-up call from hell, because they don't intend to stay where they are. They're constantly developing greater technical proficiency. And the radical regimes, specifically Iran and Iraq, that are part of this terror network, are developing weapons of mass destruction. So the next time, as horrific as this attack was, as horrible and agonizing and loss of life, the next time you will see not thousands or 10,000 people die in New York, but millions. In other words, once this Islamic militancy acquires nuclear weapons, they might change history. They might destroy our civilization, our freedoms, our democracy that they hate so much. And therefore, this wake-up call that we've received is a summons to action. It says that unless we act now to dismantle this terror network of terrorist states manipulating terrorist groups in the Middle East and beyond, then our future is in doubt. They have the will to destroy us. They don't have the power today. We have the power today to crush them. We now must show that we have the will to do so.
You wrote in your book 5 years ago, Fighting Terrorism, How Democracies Can Defeat Domestic and International Terrorism. I'll quote, in the worst scenario, the consequences could not be a car bomb, but a nuclear bomb in the basement of the World Trade Center. You know, you got the location right, the weapon wrong, but they didn't even need a nuclear weapon. Do you really envision the obtaining of weapons of mass destruction by these very same personalities or people like them, and that they would have the will to deliver even an Armageddon kind of blow to the United States?
Do you have any doubt? I mean, okay, they didn't use nuclear bombs because they don't have them, but they used a 350-ton conventional bomb, 350 tons of conventional bombs with all that fuel and That is far more powerful than anything an F-16 could launch in terms of conventional weapons. So they're well on their way. But it is important to understand that none of these groups, not bin Laden, not the Hamas and Hezbollah and the Fatah Fatah groups, Arafat's own group that formed this network of terror, none of them could act without states, without terrorist regimes. It's important to understand that. These terrorists don't float in the air. They need territory. They need a place to be launched from, to come back to coordinate. That is, those who don't commit suicide, those who orchestrate, plan, execute, arm, dispatch these terrorists. They need a place to be, and that place to be is a handful of states in the Middle East: Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, a few Arab states, and indeed this complex that includes also Arafat's own Palestinian domain, which has become, in fact, the factory of suicide bombs. Arafat has summer camps. Geraldo, he has summer camps in Gaza where Hamas and Islamic Jihad teach Palestinian children to become suicide bombers. He's preparing the kamikaze pilots not only of today, but of tomorrow. So this network that whose various parts support one another, help each other in materiel, help each other in political support in these abominable resolutions they passed in Durban the other day, this network itself has to be dismantled, because if it's not dismantled, the answer is yes, they will develop atomic weapons. They already have ballistic missiles, two of these states. They already have chemical and biological weapons. They're well on their way to developing atomic bombs. And if they do, then history will change. History is not ended, unlike what Francis Fukuyama wrote, with the triumph of capitalism and democracy over communism. In fact, there is a new conflict. And this is the threat of this Islamic militancy coupled with affiliated Arab terrorist groups who seek to destroy the West. Nothing short of that. What we have to make clear is that terrorism is an indivisible evil. It is evil everywhere, and the success of terrorists in one part of the world emboldens terrorists elsewhere. So we have to adopt the same kind of attitude that the civilized powers adopted against piracy in the 19th century, against Nazism in the 20th century. We now have to adopt against terrorism in the 21st century. It is a crime against humanity. It is evil at all times. It is unpardonable. There are no excuses and no concession to terrorism. And the terrorists and those who support them are enemies of mankind. We will fight them resolutely. I think this attitude will produce the necessary action. And I think that President Bush has been wise to call a global war of the democracies against terrorism.
Mr. Prime Minister, shalom. Thank you.
How could Muhammad Atta's passport survive the fireball explosion that supposedly cremated him, fly out of his pocket, fly out of the incinerated plane, flutter to the ground into 2 feet of debris, and end up in readable condition in the hands of investigators, all within 48 hours? Why did 19 Muslim men even need passports on domestic flights? How were passports found but not the plane's voice recorders? Why did the hijackers need passports they would never use again after their suicide flights? And why were the 19 accused Muslims not under surveillance on 911 if they were so easy to identify? The conspicuous trail of planted evidence continued 3 weeks after the 911 attacks, when anthrax letters killed 5 people and were clearly worded to throw the blame on Muslims. Death to America, death to Israel, Allah is great. It has since been proven that the anthrax came from a U.S. Army lab and was never mailed by Muslims. There are no airport security videos of any of the 19 accused Muslims boarding any of the hijacked planes.
In the days after the September attacks, there were countless rumors about strange coincidences surrounding the events. One report about a group of Middle Eastern men spotted the morning of September 11th parked just across the river from New York City has not gone away. Investigation of their presence has led to questions about whether Israel was conducting espionage on U.S. soil. We're joined now by ABC's John Miller with an exclusive report this evening.
That's right, Elizabeth. This is a case that took the FBI and the CIA more than 2 months to sort out, while 5 Israelis waited in jail. It began when this woman was watching the Twin Towers burning from her apartment in New Jersey. She noticed 3 men on top of a van, posing for pictures with the towers burning in the background.
and I could see that they were like happy. You know, they didn't look shocked to me. You know, they didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
The witness called police, who stopped the van hours later and arrested 5 men. All 5, it turns out, were Israeli. They were turned over to the FBI. Sources tell ABC News during a check of national security databases, some of the men were listed as having had connections with Israeli intelligence. At the FBI, that set off alarm bells. The FBI needed the answers to 3 important questions. Who were these men? What brought them to that parking lot on the morning of September 11th? And did they have any advance knowledge of what was going to happen that day? The men said they were just taking pictures at the time. They said they worked for a company called Urban Moving. The FBI obtained a search warrant for the company's offices.
2 SUVs were filled up with between 9 and 12 boxes and computers.
Not long after the arrests, the offices of Urban Moving were simply abandoned. Almost everything was left behind. In jail, the 5 Israelis were repeatedly interrogated and given lie detector tests. Stephen Gordon was their American lawyer.
They were asked questions if they had ever been approached by or hired by any non-United States intelligence community.
While there is still some debate among American intelligence officials, many investigators believe some of the men were part of an Israeli operation aimed at monitoring radical Islamic charities that support groups like Hamas, something lawyers for the 5 men and the Israeli government strongly deny.
These 5 Israelis were not involved in any intelligence operation in the United States. The story is simply false.
In the end, the FBI concluded there was no evidence that any of the 5 men had advance knowledge of the September 11th plot. After 71 days, the 5 Israelis were deported, leaving some ruffled feathers among both U.S. and Israeli officials. According to federal officials, the 5 men have been barred from returning to the United States for 10 years, they say because they violated immigration laws.
Bottom line, John, is there any evidence any of these 5 men knew about the September 11th attacks before they occurred?
The FBI spent a great deal of time examining this question. It does not appear that they were in place taking pictures before the planes hit, but shortly thereafter. And they say they haven't uncovered evidence that any of these 5 men, and they did their backgrounds, they searched apartments, they telephone records and so on, had any advance knowledge of the attack.
And while the FBI or certain sources might believe that in fact they were Israeli intelligence, they don't believe that the U.S. was a target, that they were actually investigating Muslim groups?
They believe if this was an intelligence operation by Israel, that it was focused on the Islamic groups and charities that raise money for groups that are considered by U.S. law enforcement and others terrorist groups. And you'll note that after September 11th, the U.S. moved on many of these groups with indictments, arrests, raids on their headquarters, something that hadn't happened prior to this.
These are groups that Israel believes have been funding Hamas and other terrorist organizations?
Groups that are responsible for most of the suicide bombings there.
All right, John Miller will have a full report. You can see it tonight on 2020 at 10 o'clock Eastern.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
On the morning of 9/11, a group of 5 Israeli nationals purported to have witnessed the initial explosion of the World Trade Center and were seen to be celebrating the event.
Fox News has learned some U.S. investigators believe that there are Israelis again very much engaged in spying in and on the U.S., who may have known things they didn't tell us before September 11th.
It is true that some in Israel saw the attack as a good thing for them. A September 12, 2001 article in the New York Times quotes now Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responding to the 9/11 attacks. Quote, "It is very good," before adding, well, not very good, but it will generate immediate sympathy. According to FBI documents, the Israelis caught celebrating the 9/11 attacks had videotaped the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center and may have possessed foreknowledge of the same. When the Israelis were arrested in New Jersey, they were carrying photos of themselves smiling with the World Trade Center burning in the background.
Nations, democracies don't go to war easily, and they usually debate and argue before they do. Sometimes they have to be bombed into going to war. In fact, that's what happened in World War II. All of Europe had been conquered. America was actually bombed in Pearl Harbor and that was a pivotal event that opened the eyes of Americans. And once their eyes were opened, they gathered the power that is available in this great free nation, and the result was preordained. I think in a similar way, the bombing of September 11th opened the eyes of Americans.
Do you know who this guy is? Wait, how about now? That's the man whose passport was found on the wreckage of 9/11. Want to know something hilarious? His uncles were found to be Mossad agents in Lebanon. They even say it in the article.
The bombing of September 11th.
קודם כל, לתת להם מכות, לא רק מכות כל כך מכירות, שהמחיר יהיה כבד מנשוא. כרגע המחיר לא כבד מנשוא. על התקפה רבת היקף על הרשות הפלסטינית. זה לפחד שהכל מתמוטט.
לא פוחדים, צוחקים להם, יראו לנו לתוך הישרת פה בצחוק, ופשוט הם לא פוחדים.
זה מה שמביא אותם
ואז, רגע, אבל אז השוק מהעולם יגיד מה, אתם כובשים? אתה לא מפחד מהעולם, ביבי.
במיוחד היום עם אמריקה, אני יודע מה זה אמריקה. אמריקה זה לא שאפשר להזיז אותו בקלות, להזיז לכיוון הנכון. אבל לא יפריעו לנו.
אז אם אנחנו עושים לזה משהו, אז הם...
יש שווה, אז נניח שהם אומרים משהו. אז אמרו, 80% מהאמריקאים תומכים בנו. זה אבסורד. לא פחדתי להתאבד שם. לא פחדתי להתאבד עם קלינטון. לא פחדתי להתאבד עם אובמה. מה היו הסכמי אוסלו? הסכמי אוסלו שהכנסת חתמה עליהם. שאלו אותי לפני הבחירות עד קיים. קיים בתנאי כפוף להדדיות וצמצום הנסיבות. אבל איך אתה מצמצם את הנסיבות? אני אתן פירוש להסכם שיאפשר לי להפסיק את הדהירה הזאת לקווי 67. איך עשינו את זה? אף אחד לא אמר מה זה אתרים צבאיים מוגדרים. אתרים צבאיים מוגדרים, אני אמרתי, אלה אזורי ביטחון. בקעת הירדן, מבחינתי זה אתר צבאי מוגדר.
נכון.
זה אוקיי.
יישובי בית שאן, עמק בית שאן.
לך תגיד. אבל אז הייתה שאלה, מי יגדיר מה זה אתרים צבאיים מוגדרים? קיבלתי מכתב מקריסטופר אליי ולערפאת, באותה לשון, שאומר שישראל בלבד היא זו שתגדיר מהם את מיקום האתרים הצבאיים האלה ואת גודלם. עכשיו, הם לא רצו לתת את המכתב הזה, אז לא נתתי את הסכם חברון. הפסקתי את ישיבת הממשלה, אמרתי, אני לא חושב. רק כשהגיע המכתב, תוך כדי הישיבה, אליי ואל ערפאת, חתמתי על הסכם. תגיד לו שעדיף לתת 2% מאשר לתת 100%. וזו הברירה שעומדת כאן הפרק. אתה נתת 2%, ובזה עצרת את הנסיגה הזאת במקום 100%.
Get somebody to blow up a bus full of children or a building full of innocent civilians. You have to grind it into their minds. You have to wash their brains and tell them there is a higher cause out there. It's religious, ethnic, racial, whatever. And for that higher cause, you can disregard all the normal rules of morality.
He doesn't believe in the worth of each individual. We must do everything we possibly can to stop the terror. Now watch this drive.
Mr. Bush, when are you going to apologize for the million Iraqis that are dead because you lied? You lied about weapons of mass destruction. You lied about connections to 9/11. You lied about Iraq being a dead. You sent me to Iraq. You sent me to Iraq in 2003. My friends are dead. Joshua Garcia. You killed people. You lied. You lied about WMD. A million Iraqis are dead because you lied. My friends are dead because you lied. You need to apologize. Apologize.
The tyrant has fallen, and Iraq is free. They wanted us to destabilize the Middle East, turn it upside down, make it under our control. I went through the Pentagon 10 days after 9/11. I went downstairs, I was leaving the Pentagon, and an officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office, and he said, I want you to know, he said, sir, we're going to attack Iraq. And I said, why? He said, we don't know. He said, I said, well, did they tie Saddam to 9/11? He said, no. And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq? He said, oh, sir. He says, it's worse than that. He pulled up a piece of paper off his desk. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office that says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. I said, is that a classified memo? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. This country was taken over by a group of people with a policy coup. This wasn't what the American people voted George Bush into office. Well, they didn't actually vote him.